So let's start by asking our two offensive guys about the two defenses. We have two top 5 units in this one, so this is a tough question. Beanie, let's start with you. Who has the edge on defense in this Cotton Bowl?
You know what? It's so tough when you look at Texas and how they played all season long. I think for the most part in this season, you know, what Pete Kwiatkowski has done with this defense is phenomenal. You look at Jahdae Barron, you know, what he's been, and, you know, him being in winning the Jim Thorpe Award trophy. Then you look on that defensive line led by, you know, the super freshman, you know, Colin Simmons there, who won the Freshman of the Year. But the way that Ohio State has played lately, I have to give them the edge on the defensive side. They've been after their passer like no other, sacking Dylan Gabriel 8 times last week, then getting after the young quarterback there in Tennessee the prior week. This defense has been playing lights out in this college football playoff.
I agree with what Beanie said. And when you look at these two defenses, Ohio State has the edge statistically whenever you look at points allowed, yard per rush, total defense. But the biggest difference to me is the playmakers that Ohio State has on defense. You look at Igbenogson, you look at Jack Sawyer, you look at Caleb Downs, a Swiss Army knife. These are guys who can make game-changing plays over the course of the game on any given play. When I look at this Texas defense, they're very sound. They play very fundamental football to a lot of the points that Beanie made. But it just seems like a lot of players who play their roles very well, and they play complementary of each other. Ohio State does that very well also, but they have those game-changing players on the defensive side of the ball, and they have a skill set that is really hard to match. It's very similar to their offense as well.
Yeah, and those Ohio State defenders, so many of them are seniors. You can just tell they're playing at a different level, not wanting their careers to be over. A lot of them foregoing the NFL draft to come back and win a national championship this year. Let's go to wide receivers, and I really just want to see if either of you can make a legit case for Texas here. Damian, no, of course, is an acceptable answer, but we'll let you try first. Who's got the edge?
Well, I mean, I think we all know that Ohio State talent-wise has the advantage, that has the upper hand. I mean, Jeremiah Smith, Abuke, they've been playing out of their minds. But I will say Texas has a little bit of an advantage when it comes to experience. Led by Gunnar Helm, their tight end, he's a senior. He was a part of that college football playoff run that they had last season. And then Matthew Golden, although he transferred from Houston and this is his first year at Texas, when you turn on the tape in the biggest moment all season long, he's always showed up. We saw that on the 4th and 13 touchdown against Arizona State to tie the game up and send it to overtime. So although Ohio State is definitely more talented at the receiver position, I think Texas has some experience along with the relationships that they have with Quinn Ewers, the timing that they've developed over the season, to where their experience can become a factor in this game as well.
You know, you win games with talent, and Ohio State has the talent to go out and win this game, and the most superior talent at the wide receiver position. You look at what, you know, Jeremiah Smith has been this season, just been a dominant presence, you know, whenever he's been on the football field. And now defenses are starting to figure out, we got to roll coverage to this guy. We can't just leave him one-on-one situations. Then you look at Emeka Mbuka and how he's been and how good of a player he is. Carnell Tate in the slot. This team is phenomenal. You know, on the offensive end, you've got to give Ohio State the edge looking at the receivers. I like Matthew Golden. I like Gunnar Helm, but Ohio State's talent is just too far in depth for this game.
I
tried, Proud. I tried.
That's all right. No, I mean, you have to try. You're the one wearing the cowboy hat right now, and it's kind of a one-sided conversation that's probably going to get a little bit more one-sided when we ask a former Ohio State running back, Beanie Wells, who has the edge at running back in a game involving Ohio State. What do you say, Beanie?
You know, I got to go with the Buckeyes, too. I love Quinshon Judkins and what TreVeyon Henderson has been this year. When you look at the tough games in which Texas have had, they hadn't rushed the ball really well with Wisner and Jadon Blue. When you look at how they played versus Georgia, 31 yards one game, 39 yards the other game, and then last week versus ASU, only 53 yards running. That's not enough to get it done. When you look at TreVeyon Henderson and Judkins, those guys have home run ability. I like them and give them the edge in that running game.
Again, Beanie is right. And again, Ohio State has the edge at the running back position. And what I love about the two backs in Quinshon and TreVeyon is they're nearly identical when you look at their stats. One has 924 rushing yards, 10 touchdowns. Another has 925 yards and 10 rushing touchdowns. So these guys, not only are they both playing at a high level, not only are they both capable of hitting the big plays and also getting the dirty work, but they complement each other so well. And they're so complementary of one another. And whenever you take one out and put another one in, the level of talent does not drop off, and they've been consistent almost all year long. But they're both great receiving threats as well, and you can use them to stretch the pass game vertically. When I look at these Texas running backs in Wisner and Blue, they're using in the passing game, but it's more horizontally. It's more in the screen game. You can get Travion Henderson, Quinshon Judkins matched up with a linebacker, and they can beat him down the field and be another target down the field for Will Howard to throw the ball to. So, I mean, this is a pretty lopsided conversation we're having, but again, Ohio State does have the edge at the running back position.
I know we already talked about defenses, but man, it's going to be tough sledding for the Texas running backs as Ohio State just led Oregon to -23. That's true, rushing yards in that last game.
Man.
As for these quarterbacks, Quinn Ewers, Will Howard, who has the edge here, Damian?
I have to go Will Howard just because of the weapons he's throwing to. I mean, if you put me in the backfield and you have me throwing to Jeremiah Smith, Ibuka, and some of those guys, I mean, I think I could complete some passes too. I mean, Quinn Ewers has a lot of experience, and he's beaten a lot of tough teams. I mean, hell, he walked into Tuscaloosa and beat Alabama pre-Kalen DeBoer when Nick Saban was still at the head of the ship. But Will Howard has played very, very consistent. In his last 8 quarters of football, he's completed 75% of his passes, 5 touchdowns, 1 interception. And again, just look at who he's throwing the football to. Jeremiah Smith and these receivers, not only are they playing at a high level, but they're playing with a chip on their shoulder. We saw the comments that Jeremiah Smith made before the Oregon game saying, if you play us man-to-man, we're going to throw you the football. And I can't imagine the level of confidence that gives a quarterback, knowing you've got a superstar receiver, one of the best receivers in all of college football, as a 19-year-old that can beat anybody. He knows he's going to beat people, and he knows he's going to get open. So I'm going Will Howard with this matchup.
You know, I got to go Will Howard, too. You know, I love what Will Howard's been able to do.
Of course you do.
Surprise.
When you look at Quinn Ewers, he has the talent. And I think when you look at the perspective of him being drafted, that potential is certainly much higher. But when we talk about efficiency, we talk about distributing the ball downfield in pressure situations, I think you give that edge to Will Howard. He's making the right decisions at the right time for his football team. I know he had some miscues in some big games, particularly that Michigan game, forcing the ball and throwing turnovers. But for the most part, he's done everything you need a quarterback to do to make your team successful.
All right, I got to step in here and be devil's advocate because Will Howard is 0-3 against Texas dating back to his Kansas State days. I think you could argue slightly different weapons he has to use around him with the Buckeyes now. Beanie, does that concern you at all that he has not been able to beat the Longhorns?
No, it really doesn't. You know, when you look at what he has at his disposal right now, with the playmakers that we all just mentioned, and then the coaching staff that he has kind of gearing up a game plan for him to be successful, he's going into this with a lot more weapons and a lot more equipped for battle than when he was at K-State. So it doesn't concern me at all. I think this is a completely different football team. You know, when we talk about Ohio State and how they were even in the beginning part of the year to where they are now, they were baptized in the fire and walked out a completely different reborn football team after that Michigan loss. And we're watching it unfold right before. So no, it doesn't concern me that he didn't beat him at K-State.
All right, we've talked about these teams. How about the coaches? Who has the edge between Ryan Day and Steve Sarkisian? Damian?
I think Ryan Day, and I would say because of the pressure that has been put on by the fan base of Ohio State, from former players, from media members like myself, all the people who have zeroed in and focused on Ryan Day and his inability to beat Michigan and win the big games and no national championship with the talented roster that he's had. He's coaching under that pressure, and at times it seemed like he succumbed to that pressure, but now in these last 2 football games, they're rising to the occasion, and he is coaching at a different level. His players are playing at a different level, and I would even extend it past the head coach. Look at his assistants. Look at his offensive coordinator and Chip Kelly, who led Oregon to a national championship. Look at Brian Hartline and his track record of developing superstar wide receivers, as we're watching one in Jeremiah Smith develop right in front of our eyes. And then you look at the defensive side of the ball and their defensive coordinator, Jim Knowles, who has led this defense to be the #1 total defense in the country. They know when to bring pressure. They know how to get pressure with only rushing 4 guys. And they know when to let their best cover players in the secondary just line up and cover and eliminate receivers one-on-one. So I definitely have to give the edge in coaching to Ohio State, not just because of Ryan Day and the pressure that he's facing, but because he's surrounded by great coordinators, great position coaches that have put their players in positions to be successful throughout the course of this season.
Damn, I got to piggyback off you. It's Ryan Day. You know, he's been in tough situations, and, you know, he's figured out a way to revamp this football team and to make these guys motivated, and not just motivating these guys, but figuring out ways schematically to be better offensively. And when you look at how plays were being called before with Chip Kelly at the helm, I think it was a little more conservative especially when you look at the talent that they had. Now, I think now that they're opening it up on the offensive end, we're seeing a much different team. Then Jim knows, figuring out schematically, you know what, I got two of the top edge rushers in college football, and JTT and Jack Sawyer. I'm going to let those guys pin their ears back. And that's what they've been doing. So I love the coaching staff for Ohio State. I do love Texas' coach on the defensive side, Pete Kwiatkowski, who I mentioned earlier. But I think Ohio State gets the edge based off of how they played as of late.
All right, I know we give Beanie a hard time being Ohio State homer, but it was a clean sweep from both of you. Ohio State has the edge at defense, wide receiver, quarterback, running back, and coaching. So I think it's safe to say these two will pick the Buckeyes to win in tonight's Cotton Bowl. Thank you both so much for breaking down all of that for us. It's Texas and Ohio State tonight at 7:30 Eastern. Just the fourth meeting between these two. Ohio State winning the first 14 playoff back in 2014, hoping to do the same for the first ever 12-teamer this year.
Thank you.
Okay, we are now joined by our head coaches, but before we get started with our news conference, I would like to introduce the chair of the Goodyear Cotton Bowl Classic, Mr. Kelvin Walker.
Thank you, Charlie. Good afternoon, everyone. I'll be brief as I know there are a lot of questions to be asked to the coaches. But first, we want to take a moment to welcome you all to AT&T Stadium and the 89th Goodyear Cotton Bowl. Tomorrow's CFP semifinal is setting up to be one of the ones for the record books. I can't remember the last time we've had this much hype for one of our games, and we're happy to have our Longhorn and Buckeye fans here in town. I now have acquired another 100,000 Buckeye and Longhorn fans who need tickets, so it's been quite the time this week. But it's great to see both of the coaches here. Coach Day, it's good to see you here. Coach Sark, good to see you here as well. Coach Day, this is your second time in a row coming here, and we're happy to have you come back. You're becoming a regular here. Coach Sarkisian was the 1997 MVP of the Cotton Bowl, so it's good to see him come back again. And so once again, we believe we will have a wonderful matchup tomorrow, and we're excited about it. And before I take my seat, I'd like to present both of you with our official Goodyear Cotton Bowl Classic cowboy hats. Thank you all for coming, and we'll proceed with the program.
Okay, thank you, Kelvin. Appreciate that. Let's get going with our news conference. We want to say welcome to Coach Day and Coach Sarkisian, and thank you for taking time out of your last day of preparation to be with us. We will begin our news conference by asking our head coaches for an opening statement, and then we will move to the floor for questions. And we will start with Coach Sarkisian. Coach?
Yeah, I'd like to begin with, first of all, with the recent tragic events in New Orleans, and obviously what's happening in Los Angeles right now. Obviously, speaking on behalf of myself, Coach Day, both of our programs, our thoughts and prayers are with all those that have been affected by this. What is happening in Los Angeles right now is unfathomable. Being from Los Angeles, a lot of friends and family there that are affected, and so I just hope everybody out there can keep their thoughts and prayers with those, and obviously those in New Orleans with some of the tragic events that have occurred. As far as being here at the Cotton Bowl, it's an honor. Obviously, being at the University of Texas and the Cotton Bowl are synonymous with one another. I can't believe it's been over 20 years since the University of Texas has been in this game. So to be back, it's an honor. Obviously, being the semifinal game. I think it's a credit to our players and to our staff, the work that they've put in. 2 years in a row we've been in this place now, and it's been something that we were striving for when we first took over the program. And so year 3, year 4 to be back, it's definitely it's an honor, but it's also a credit, I think, to the people in our organization for the work that they've put in. That being said, we've got a great opponent. That doesn't need to be said probably much more. I mean, Coach Day's done a great job. He's got a tremendous staff, great talent on their team. They've navigated the season tremendously. I think in this day and age of college football, to think that you're just going to go unblemished is probably not realistic, especially not in our two conferences with the amount of quality teams that you have to play week in and week out, and the grind that it puts on your team, not only physically but mentally. And I think the ones that can be standing here January 9th and 10th, playing for an opportunity to play for a national championship, I think the credit is due to all four teams, but obviously the job that he's done to get them here. So it's a great honor. It's humbling, but it's also a great opportunity and one we're looking forward to.
Okay, Coach, thank you so much. Coach Day?
Yeah, I'll echo Coach Sark's comments, certainly about all the tragedies that are going on, certainly in California and Coach's background there, and certainly just being there last week has given our coaches and team opportunity to pause and certainly give our thoughts and prayers to those that are going through that difficult time, and certainly those in New Orleans.